All right, good morning. I want to welcome you all to our last of our Psalms mini classes, and we've now had 3 sessions, and Glenn Parika had taught the first one, and Reverend Brent Illman has taught the other 2. And I have a couple of quick announcements here to kind of get us organized moving forward. First of all, after today, Adult Sunday School is taking a break until January. There's just too much going on with the music ministry and all of that other good stuff, the children's pageant, for us to try and compete in here. So we will be back in January. There will be news in the e-news and the messenger about what we're planning. We're still working out the details, so be looking for that. Also, if you're part of the book discussion groups, we are going to continue reading books again in January, and we're working out the list, so you can be watching for that. For those of you who are at home, if you have comments, either positive or negative, about your experience, email me, because we don't know what it's like for you at home. And so we can't change things or fix things if we don't know, that a problem exists. Anyone who wants to, so a lot of you know that I have this long email list of almost 50 names that I send out emails about things like upcoming Sunday school classes. Again, I don't know who's watching at home and all of that. I don't even know who all of you are behind your mass here in the sanctuary. So if you want to be on my email list, just simply email me. My name is Lynn Johnson. You can find me in my FBC, and I will be more than happy to add you to that. The archived sessions here, both of MX and of Andy's class, and now of the Psalms class, are going to be moving off the live stream page, which is where you go for worship on Sunday. They're going to be moving to the adult ministry page. So you go to the website, you click ministry, you click adult, and all those everything we've done all fall is still there, is still archived. You can still watch it, but that's where you're going to find it. You won't find it on our on the page where worship usually is anymore. Kathy's in the middle of moving that. And finally, I have to go to the airport at 10:45 to pick up my daughter, so I need a microphone person at 10:45, if I can have a volunteer. All right, Glenn will run around with the microphone at 10:45, as the people at home need the microphone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. First of all, good morning. My name is Brent, and I believe I've introduced myself to you before, so we will skip that. I'd like to just open with just a quick comment about the last hymn that we sang in worship today, because there's a fascinating story with that hymn, and it relates to the Psalms that we have been looking at. The hymn was by Martin Rinkart. It was written towards the end of the 30 Years' War. Rinkart was in a city. It was a city that was under siege during the war for a long, long period of time. During that period of siege, the town didn't have food. Disease became rampant. The clergy were burying people. First, 1 or 2 a day. Then it was 10 a day. Then it was 20 a day. Pretty soon the clergy died, and Rinkart was the only one left, and he was doing 30, 40 funerals a day, including his own wife. At the end of all of this, or towards the end of it, he sat down and penned a family devotion that began, "Now thank we all our God with hearts and hands and voices." I share that with you because context sometimes is important. For understanding the Psalms and the hymns that we read and sing. In many ways, that hymn was just the perfect bookend for, I thought, an excellent sermon on Sunday. Let me read to you the Psalm for today. I trust that you all have received a copy of it. Otherwise, there is one there. I'm going to read it to you from the New Revised Standard Version. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow, shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Amen. Let's move to the next slide. Let me just quickly review the method that I use as I look at Psalms, texts, and other things. First, I will look at it within its historic context, why it was written, how it was used, how its relation to some other scriptures, much as I did with the hymn that I just talked about. Second, I'm going to look at how the psalm has historically been interpreted. Many of you have jumped on that already, sharing with me Luther's hymn, A Mighty Fortress. And third, and this is where we get to participate together, how the psalm speaks to me and to you today. If we move to the next one, the hymn title, the psalm title in the New RSV is God's Defense of His City and People, and then it has to the leader of the Korahites, according to Alamoth, a song. Okay, and most of us kind of skip over that. But since this is a study, and my wife just warned me that there was a group that did this as a psalm study, so I'm going to be on my toes on that. But what does that introduction mean? The Korahites. The Korahites were was a priestly tribe or priestly group who were related ultimately to Levi. Levi, you will recall, was one of the sons of Jacob. So the Levites were one of the 12 tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob. The Levites, Levi himself had a son named Korah, who was part of the Exodus, and we read in Numbers 16 how Korah rebelled against Moses. And of course, you rebel against Moses, you get struck dead. But his sons, the sons of Korah, were spared death. That's the background. The Levites were, when the people of Israel inhabited the Holy Land, or Canaan, when they took over Canaan from the Canaanites, the Levites were not a landed tribe. Okay, they did not have land of their own. They became, the tribe that first of all took care of the meeting place of the Lord, and then they were the tribe that took place of the temple. You will recall in the story of the Good Samaritan, one of the ones who walked past, the person lying in the road was a Levite. He was a keeper of the temple, okay? They were in charge of taking care of the temple. The Korahites had, particular responsibilities within the temple itself. In 1 Chronicles 9:19, we read, the Korahites were in charge of the work of the service. They were doorkeepers of the tent, and their fathers had been in charge of the camp of the Lord, keepers of the entrance. And so, you inherited from your parents, your position in life, and Levites and Korahites had particular responsibilities within the temple itself. So, this is, will also, let us know that this was a temple psalm. This was something that was, part of when the temple itself, when the people gathered, when a group of people gathered for praising God. The Korahites, there are a number of psalms that are attributed to the Korahites. I've listed them. They're in the 40s and the 80s, okay? If you want, you can quickly take a picture of the text up there. But it's fascinating to see how those are, where those are. Questions on the Korahites? Okay, then we have this thing according to Alamoth. This one it really is kind of in a little bit of how do I put this? There's a difference of opinion what this means. In some people believe that it meant treble voices. Others, said, well, these were female voices that were sung. That's what Alamoth refers to, or treble voices or female voices. However, you have the other concern is that the psalm itself really does not lend itself to a feminine structure. At least that's what some of the scholars have informed us. The other choice is that perhaps it refers to an instrument itself, an oboe type instrument, which I guess tends to be an upper cleft instrument, or perhaps a stringed instrument that played at a higher clef. Those are possibilities. It's very interesting how the Midrash, how the Jewish people, the rabbis have interpreted this particular text, because they believe that this Alamoth refers to the hidden things of God. Very interesting. Midrash has completely wiped out the women from the text and the upper voices, but that is how that has been treated. If we move to the next slide, the original function is it probably was sung within the context of the temple itself, it has that type of a background. Within the temple worship, a lot of the psalms and a lot of the singing was antiphonal. In other words, one group would sing it, and then the other group would sing it. Maybe you've done that in worship or at some other time, where the male voices would sing one part, and then the female voices, and then the tenors, and then the but it was probably done in that way. And when we look at the psalm itself, we'll see how it lends itself and how psalms themselves lend themselves to that particular type of service. The other thing that we come up with is the word S-E-L-A-H, Selah. Okay, I can remember, and I was in the second or third grade, and these were the days when, at least in New Jersey, we opened our class day with reading of a psalm, because a third of the kids in my school were Jewish, and then we said the Lord's Prayer, which was the thing. But I remember I was reading a psalm, and I came across this word Selah, okay, in the King James Version. I just said Selah, and everyone looked up, and it just kept reading, and wondered what that was. Well, I was so curious about that, I ended up going to seminary to discover why we said Selah. It probably is some kind of musical inscription or direction that was given, for the use of this psalm in worship. If you look at the psalm itself, it occurs after, after each one of those, each third of the psalm. Through the mountains, though the mountains tremble with his tumult, Selah. The God of Jacob is our refuge, Selah. The God of Jacob is our refuge, Selah. So it might be direction that is given in terms of how to use it within worship itself. In our hymnal, there's sometimes direction, at least in the new book of worship for Presbyterians, there is direction on how to use psalms within the context of worship themselves. If we can move to the next slide there, thanks. The themes of this are really, this is kind of really lends itself to a 3-point sermon if you're that type of a preacher. But there are three basic themes that come through in this. The first theme is, God is a shelter from natural disaster and from storms. The second one is Jerusalem is the city of God. And it's fascinating, it's not mentioned. Jerusalem itself is not mentioned, but it is inferred, from that. And the third one is God has dominion over the nations. Which is fascinating. The prophet Amos, who is probably contemporaneous with the writing of this psalm, will remind the Hebrew people that God is not only has dominion over the nations, but that Israel is counted among those nations, and God has dominion and judges Israel itself, which is a strong theme in those first two chapters of the prophet Amos. If we can move to the next slide there. It's dominion over the natural order. And let me try and see if I can show you some of the rhythm of this. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a mirroring or repetition that is going on there, which is very common in Hebrew poetry and in the Psalms. If we were to divide this, or if we were to use this within worship, I'd have one side go say, therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. You have that kind of a rhythmic process going on in this, much the way we would find it within a hymn itself. Verse 3 echoes verse 2, and that echoing process is very much a part of psalmody, and you can see it, through many, many other psalms. To me, that suggests that it was part of that the temple worship experience, where one group would make the statement and the other group would respond. Do some of you remember those days in the back of the hymnal when we did responsive readings? Okay, I grew up. I'm a 5 Presbyterian hymnal pastor. I've been through 5 iterations of the Presbyterian hymnal, But I can remember that one. That was the one I grew up with, and you would respond, to the pastor, with one, but it was broken up much the way I have shown that here. My question for you, and we can open this up at this point, is: does this speak? Where we talk about natural disaster, does it speak to our world of COVID-19? Does it speak to our world of climate change, of wildfires, of tsunamis? Does it? How do we interpret? That God, is our refuge and strength, even in the midst of natural disasters, and when those natural disasters, are consuming. That's where the rubber hits the road in terms of this psalm. I'm going to let you, responses, thoughts? Maybe it goes to that hope and optimism thing that we heard about in worship today. Yes, back there.
One thing that struck me between the first section and the second section is the contrast between the sea and the river.
The sea and the river, okay.
The sea is where all the chaos happens, and the river is where God dwells and where it's peaceful. And so in terms of how, in a certain sense, the third section talks about more of a refuge in wartime, but it's saying that the second section becomes more of an internal refuge rather than an external one, and so the river is the calming of the soul. That the sea has the chaos and the fear and all that.
Yeah, that's good. The sea, even going back to the creation story, is related to the Babylonian god Tiamat, which is the god of chaos, and Davy Jones' locker is kind of what we've inherited from that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you were talking about the back and forth. Are you referring to antiphonal?
Yes.
So, and antiphonal. And do you mind if I make a comment about verse 10, or is that too early?
Verse 10? Sure. We will get there, though. If you want to hold it, or do you want to say it now? Go for it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go for it. This verse, and I could be, of course, correct me if I have a different understanding than you do. Many people choose verse 10, be still and know that I am God, kind of as a calm, soothing verse. And my understanding, and I've seen it in a couple of commentaries, I think it makes some sense that it's building up. It's more of a command, be still, rather than, oh, sweetie pie, just go take a nap. So
I think that's a good comment.
Okay.
And we'll get there, and hopefully we can build upon that. Go for it.
Going along with the sermon this morning, in verse 2, what sticks out to me is, we will not fear. It doesn't say be afraid of it.
Sure.
Things will happen, but do not fear. So,
and I'm just going to make the comment, and because I think it's appropriate, fear and common sense are interesting, how do I put this, companions. I will not fear, so I'm not going to wear a mask. I will not fear, so I won't get the shot. I hear that a lot. And I think that, that's where, we need to work with this psalm. Those are I think some of the difficulties and the shades of nuance within the text and, biblical interpretation itself. But I'm glad you pointed it out. We will not fear is, I think that runs through the Bible, and especially, in the New Testament. I mean, the first thing the angel says to Mary and to Joseph is, do not be afraid. And the angels will go there. Let's move on to number 7, slide 7. Okay. This is the second, verses 4 through 7. And I'm just going to jump out there and say it's really refers to Jerusalem, or in this case, Zion. Here it says, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. Okay, those of us that endured seminary had to read The City of God, City of Man by Augustine. The city of God, of course, is Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. It is, also the city of God that is there in Revelation. City of man, Babylon, really. The relationship is there. The holy habitation of the Most High. What does that mean? It's where God lives. It's where God dwells, right? Okay. Why did they build the temple? Remember, they built the temple because, I think Solomon was on a building kick, but they built the temple because they wanted a place for God to dwell, God was getting sick of living in a tent, camping. It was a very interesting sociological change for the people for the Hebrew people. But so they built the temple, and the temple itself is kind of built like with different walls. And as you go toward the inner sanctum of the temple, there is the Holy of Holies. Okay, and the Holy of Holies is where God is believed to have dwelt. And it's behind a curtain. And I think once a year, the high priest is allowed to go back there. But it's so terrible, they even tie a rope to his leg in case, so they can pull him back out. Because, if one experiences God, one might be totally consumed. And so it was kind of a safety measure. Where that was brought home, I think, was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you've ever seen that, it really comes home in that movie. But the habitation of the Most High was the temple itself. And certainly Levites would want to talk about the temple. And so that is there. God is in the midst of the city. Once again, this is God's city. This is where God dwells. 3 religions, hold Jerusalem as home base. And God will help it when the morning dawns. Okay, and then we get to the river part. We talked about it. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. Okay, some people have said, well, this is a reference to the Jordan River. Well, the Jordan River is about, I think, 20, 25 miles away from Jerusalem, so it probably is not that. I was in Jerusalem, I think it was 8 years ago, and one of the places that I saw where these underground currents went. They believe these underground currents are the water that it was referring to. It provided water for the city itself, and of course, like Colorado and many of the western states, water is a life concern for the people of the Middle East. It is the major concern, I would say, in Israel itself. Much of the unrest that we're seeing there going on is related to issues of water. But the importance of water, water, not only brings calm, it brings sustenance, it brings life itself. This is living water. It is water that you drink. It is water that you bathe in. It makes you clean, so you are acceptable to God. Jerusalem is a fortress city. It is a walled city, and some of you might have been there, and you maybe placed even a prayer in the Wailing Wall. But it was a walled fortress city, believed to be safe, and the city of God is secure. Very interesting, moving from talking about an actual city to what Luther does later on with his hymn. Let's move on to the next slide. God has dominion over the nations, okay? In verse 6, the nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter, but he utters his voice, the earth melts. I hope that's not a reference to global warming. Come and behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations he's brought. He makes the works of the Lord. He makes war cease, breaks the bow, shatters the spear, burns the shields. Really? This is one of those ones where interpretation becomes very interesting. Are we dealing with, poetry here? Are we, is this, do we actually witness, God stopping bombs and burning up, shields? What is this a reference to? Person there.
You know what? It makes me think of, and I apologize, I can't remember the reference, in one of the Gospels in which Jesus says that you're going to always have war. There's always going to have problems. So, no matter what, between people, whether it's individually or between nations. But I'd never thought of this. Perhaps, I'm just wondering, perhaps this reference is God has control. He has the omnipotence, the sovereignty to stop wars when he wants to and when it comes in line with his will. But it may, there are times and seasons when it's not that way.
Yeah, I find this, go ahead. Go for it. You're the new guy, okay. I find this one, just one of those areas of interpretation where we are, where this is a hopeful text, and maybe in light of the sermon today, hope is something other than optimism. Oh, God will stop this war. Well, no. And then we move to let's move the slide to the command. Be still and know that I am God. This, just is the command that is God's command to the entire cosmos, the creation, and to all the nations. Be still and know that I am God. To whom is that command addressed? It's addressed to humanity, but it is addressed also to the cosmos, to the seas that are, it is addressed to all of creation. This is not merely for us. This is God speaking. You will also recall, that creation, how does creation occur? Because God speaks. God says, and it happens. That is the nature of creation. God says, and it ceases. What is the content of stillness? Still in this really means cease your fighting. Stop it. The Hebrew word for still translates as stop, cease, be calm, relax. What's the stillness that you seek? Do any of you wish for stillness? Maybe not. Okay, I'm going to move then to the historic function. Let's move to slide 10. There's the original, one of the originals of Martin Luther's "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." I dare you to try and hum that one. It's a little different. But the Luther, this was Psalm 46. There's much been said that Luther really, historically, it was Luther's lectures on Romans that we believe kicked off the Reformation. But before that, he did a series of lectures at the Theological College on Psalms. And many believe that, it was the lecture on Psalms that, made him dig further into, what the grace of God is and how what the nature of the church is. There's all kinds of sayings that Luther would get together with Melanchthon and others, and Psalm 46 would impact them. This was the hymn that is based upon it. It's the one that we know. Once again, is the mighty fortress is our God? Is that a reference to the city of Jerusalem, like it was in the Psalm? Easy question, I think. Or is it a reference to something else? Mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing. Okay, it's a reference to the New Jerusalem in some ways. And the New Jerusalem, of course, is the church. Let's move on one more slide, and I have it's Psalm 46, not 47. I don't know what I was thinking when I put that in. Historically, it's in a whole bunch of different hymns in our hymn book. Psalm 47, how can I keep from singing, refers to this. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since Christ the Lord, I typoed there, of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? Okay, some of you enjoy that one. It's once again pulled directly from this psalm. Move to the next slide. Jesus Christ's treasure, which is hymn number 830. In thine arm I rest me, foes who would oppress me cannot reach me here. Though the earth be shaking, every heart be quaking, Jesus calms my fear. Okay. Lightnings flash and thunders crash, yet though sin and hell assail me, Jesus will not fail me. Once again, do you hear the psalm coming through in that text? These are some of our most assuring hymns that we have when we sing and worship. And some of these are our favorites, but the psalm comes through there. Let's move to the next one. Okay, I kind of listed a whole bunch there. These are, in many ways, what I call sturdy hymns. Okay, when I was actively in the, preaching, in every worship service, I always wanted one sturdy hymn, and like Mighty Fortress, Our God, Our Help in Ages Past. But, oh, worship the King, oh, glorious above, glorious things of thee are spoken. Okay, how about this one? This one back there, remember you talked about the river? Shall we gather at the river? Shall we gather at the river? Okay, and then how firm a foundation. Once again, in the midst of the earth shaking, how firm a foundation. Sing praise to God who reigns above. And then, if thou but trust in God to guide thee, in verse 2, only be still and wait God's leisure. And then the Sibelius hymn, Finlandia, be still my soul. All of those pick up on this hymn. We're kind of running out of time, and I promised you 10 minutes. I'm going to give it to you. Let's move to that last slide. How does this psalm address us? I'm going to just speak personally, and then we'll chime in. I know some of you have some things to say. First, for me, it addresses me pastorally. And as a pastor, often I would go into a pastoral care situation clueless. And I think most pastors will tell you that. We walk into some situations not knowing what to expect, not really knowing even how to prepare. That was my first 2 months of being a pastor, and a woman broke her neck in my congregation. As the associate pastor, went to the hospital to see her, and she was in all kinds of traction. Didn't know what to say. I was just literally blown out of the tub. And so I read to her Psalm 46 just because I couldn't deal with the silence. And I remember going back to seeing her again, and I would take the Bible with me because someone from my ordination had given me something called the Pastor's Bible, and I thought, well, that's a good thing to take when you do pastoral work. And so I took it with me, and she said, read Psalm 46 to me again. So I read it again. And every time I go, she said, read Psalm 46 to me again. Okay, this was like about 2 months later. The door was shut, and I thought, oh no. So I knocked on the door, and she said, wait a minute. And she opened the door and walked out. Okay. Pastorally, it speaks to me that way. Mrs. Duncan, I remember her today. The other thing is on Christmas Eve. Karen, my wife, will tell you that Christmas was not always a happy time when I was pastor because of the dealing with expectations are like unreal. But Christmas Eve was the time when I could say, be still. And one of my, oftentimes if I could work Psalm 46 into the Christmas Eve service where I would say, be still, finally. Stop it. Stop the running around. Stop doing all this stuff. Stop the hustle, be still and know that I am God. But the second part is know that I am God, is experience a sense of awe. To me, that's where the Psalms move us. Experience a sense of the largeness, the greatness, the power of the Almighty. Be still. And in the presence of that, that's all we can be. I'll let you speak. I know you wanted to say something here up here, so
wonder for, besides interviewing Herman Melville for Moby Dick, and interviewing one of the abolitionists who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, she wrote letters for local and state and national leaders. One of her letters got to President Lincoln, who in 1863 was coming up because of the war going on, the Civil War, but he also made his Thanksgiving plea. He also said, we need to set the fourth Thursday in November to wish Happy Thanksgiving and to bless those around us and to come and maybe pick out, but also to enjoy thanking God for this time. So I wish you a blessed Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday. Good day.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
What strikes me too, as I think about this psalm and some of the others that we've looked at briefly, is how this theology emerges in a lot of Black African American churches and hymnals too. This idea of a fortress, especially, and the reference to all those things that threaten faith, encounter our lives, disrupt our lives, create loss in our lives. A lot of this imagery, the metaphors, really captured an awful lot in the African American hymnal, and even picked up in, if you listen carefully, in some contemporary Christian music. You might get tired hearing it over and over, but it is there.
Yeah, and the psalm itself, as we hear it, asks the question, what really protects us? What ultimately protects us? So, other responses, comments about the hymn, the psalm itself? The microphone's there, okay. Any other? Okay, I think we're moving toward the end. Why don't I close then with a word of prayer? Gracious and loving God, we offer our thanks for this day, for the opportunity to gather, to share, to hear your word of comfort, your word of hope, and perhaps your word of judgment that is filled with grace. We pray now that as we move from this room into the world, we may take with us the hope that we learned of in worship, the hope that is described in this psalm, the hope that we know in your Son, Jesus Christ. May we take him into the world. We pray in his name. Amen. Once again, thank you.